A very good morning to you, brothers and sisters. After this uh, Pentecostal or university experience of Pentecost, I need to. We need to wait a little for the translation to get the joke. Our dear friends, we're in the final stages of the World Assembly. And we begin to ask ourselves, and now what? What do we do with all the information received, with the experiences that we have lived, with the friends that we have made, and even the hearts that have been pierced by Cupid's arrows? With all the certainties and the uncertainties that we take home. How do we go forward? How do we walk forward? We have heard amazing testimonies of movements and people that challenge us to run the race with perseverance. That after 15 or 20 years have finally been able to affiliate to this community. And what amazing examples, and how they challenge us to continue forward. And it's exactly so about this theme that I want to share with you today. Paul, in this passage, talks about a race. That's the first section, a race. But personally, this topic of running doesn't particularly resonate with me, because 3 years ago, my foot was broken in hundreds of small pieces. And I had to put a titanium plate and innumerable screws in my foot. So I cannot continue running. On the other hand, I come from a context where we have some great runners in Latin America. Maybe some of you recognize the person who's on the screen. Our very dear Ciel Machado, and maybe you recognize another face that's in there as well. Ricardo. In the light of this, really, I don't feel qualified to talk about running. And for this reason, I like to think about the story from the perspective that Sergei has already mentioned, the fable of the tortoise and the hare, where obviously I am a tortoise. And this encourages me a lot, because I think that even though I go slowly, and even just walking, I have the chance to get to the goal, the same as many who are here today. So in the first point, we have the challenge is to continue forward. We see that in the passage, Paul gives us the challenge to continue walking. Paul insists a lot in this point, because he knows he has not arrived, but he gives us the strategy to be able to run to achieve the goal. The strategy is not to get tied up in the things that can hold us back. Sometimes when we think about this, we think about negative things like sickness, lack of money, difficult political situations, like the thing that we have heard about in El Salvador, the possible coup. But sometimes there are good things that also entangle us, including they can take us into a different race completely, a long way from the race that God has called us to run. In ancient times, to be a runner gave you great status. You represented your city, and you would could become a hero.
Hoy
Today, we
tenemos
have many
muchas opciones
options
de carrera.
of races.
Estamos en un
We're in
contexto
the
universitario
university context.
y al menos en
And
América
at least
Latina
in Latin
llamamos
America,
carrera
we
a
use
aquello
the
que
word
estudiamos.
carrera as race. It's the
Iniciamos
same
con
word
un
as we use
corazón
for the career,
misionero nuestra
what we
travesía por la
study in the
universidad.
university. So often our students begin with a real missionary heart for the university. But as time goes on, we start to see our career in a different way. It's not enough, a PhD. We look to fill ourselves with many degrees, and this ambition can become a weight, because we are looking in the end to become our own heroes. Another race that sometimes is a temptation is in our movements. Sometimes we say we have projectitis. We're so busy with generating projects to have sufficient money, to keep the staff worker, to maintain the work that we're doing, and sometimes we forget about what is our real mission in the university. That's exactly what Paul is saying that we should not forget. Second point is what Paul has said at the beginning of the chapter. He mentions many things that he has left behind: degrees, what he has inherited, knowledge, all his experience. All these things he has taken as rubbish. He has left those things to continue forward. I think it's same as the previous point. We can see things that are good and bad that can distract us. We can see things that are negative in our lives that we should forget or heal. Difficult situations that cause sadness, pain, bitterness, and resentment. All of these things God wants to take away from us so that we can go forward, because it is Himself that calls us through Jesus Christ to take all these heavy things, all these weights to the cross for us. Maybe God wants to do a cleansing deeply, deeply in your life. And maybe He is using this time in the World Assembly to take these things, to bring them to the surface that weigh you down so that you can go forward. I want to ask you, plead with you, to take the time to make the most of the opportunity of the pastoral care, to take time to talk to one of your own staff, to help in the process of healing these things. Don't take that weight back to your country or to your movement. Make the most of the spaces here. After this practical advice that Paul gives, he talks about those who are experienced runners. In my church, there's a great boom in people who want to run, to jog. We do have some people who really do have experience, who have won prizes. But there is a group that have all the latest gear, the running gear, the latest and the best. But they just go out on the weekends to go for a walk. It looks like they are very good runners. It looks like they know a lot about running, but it's really just the external things. They think that they're perfect, or they think they're mature, experienced runners, but most of them are not even able to run 5 blocks. So Paul
paradigmas
wants to
oficiales
orientate.
de cómo correr
He
la
wants to
carrera.
give the official paradigm and how to
Y al
run
parecer
the
es tan
race.
irónico,
And it seems
pues se
ironic,
ríe en su cara de aquellos que se creen
and he laughs
perfectos o
or
maduros.
makes a comment about those who think they are perfect or
Son
mature,
como estos hermanos con trajes de
but they
running,
haven't
pero sin el
really
estado
changed
físico
their
requerido.
the way of thinking.
Pues no han
It's like
cambiado
these
su
friends
manera de pensar.
that they look like they're professionals, but really
¿Cuál es el
they
modo de
they
pensar que
don't
deben tener?
have the experience to do so.
Pablo ya lo ha
What is the way
especificado
that we
antes.
should be thinking?
Y lo
Paul has
escuchamos
already
también con
mentioned
Darwin,
it
¿no?
this
Cristo es nuestro modelo a
previously,
seguir.
and Daryl has mentioned it.
Esa es la actitud
Christ
que debemos
is
seguir.
our
Y ahora
example
se pone
and the
él
attitude
mismo
that
como
we
un
should
ejemplo
we
vivo
should follow.
junto a sus queridos amigos
And Paul puts himself,
Epafrodito
presents
y
himself
Timoteo.
as an example together with his dear friends
Creo
Epaphroditus
que
and
este
Timothy.
es un gran
I think
desafío.
this is a great challenge for us.
¿Podemos ser un
Can we
ejemplo
be
para
an
otras
example
personas?
also for other people?
Tenemos en
Do we have
mente
in mind
que hay personas que
there are
están
people who are
aprendiendo
learning
de cómo nos
that
comportamos
how they
para
should live
intentar vivir su propio cristianismo?
to try and live their own faith?
¿Consideramos esto al momento de
Do we
tomar
take this into
decisiones?
account
¿O
when we
creemos que
make
solo nos
decisions?
afectan a nosotros
Or do we
y
only
a
think
nadie más?
that these decisions affect ourselves and no
Tal
one
vez
else?
en esta asamblea
Maybe
has
in this
conocido
World
algún
Assembly,
modelo relevante
you have
para tu vida.
seen a relevant
Personas que
model
te han
for your life.
desafiado en la misión
People that have
estudiantil
challenged
o
you
en lo
in the student
académico,
ministry
o que han
or in the
atravesado
academic
desafíos
context,
similares
or
a lo que
people
tú
have
estás
been through
enfrentando
similar
ahora,
situations,
como es el caso de
challenges
Lisette que conocíamos esta
that
mañana.
you are facing
Y
now,
han
and they
sabido
have known how to
seguir
keep
adelante.
walking. I want to invite you
Quiero invitarte
to take a moment
a que en lo
to
que queda de
challenge,
esta asamblea
sorry, to thank
te des
these
un
people
momento
that have
para
been an example for
agradecerles
you,
y
to
animarlas
go
a
to them
seguir
and
adelante
encourage them
como un modelo.
to continue as a
Y también quiero
example.
alentarte
I
a
want
que
to
empieces
encourage
tú
you
mismo a
to consider
considerarte un
yourself
ejemplo
as an
para
example
que
for,
otros te
for
puedan
others,
mirar y seguir.
so that others can
No con el
observe
ánimo
your
de
life,
jactarse,
not to become proud,
sino considerando que nuestro modo de
but
pensar
consider that
debe ser
our
como Cristo.
mind, our
Y eso
way of
hace una
thinking should be
enorme
like
diferencia
Christ,
entre la jactancia
and that makes a
y la
big
inspiración.
difference between pride and inspiration and being
Hasta aquí,
an inspiration for others.
nos hemos decidido por la carrera correcta.
We're okay?
Quitado el lastre.
We have
Hemos
taken
cambiado nuestra
the
manera de
weights,
pensar.
we are changing our way of
Hasta que
thinking,
Pablo nos recuerda
we are in the
que
race,
esta es una carrera con obstáculos.
but then Paul reminds us
El
it's a
problema
race
es que
that
estos
has
obstáculos no son
obstacles.
los que vienen de afuera que tú puedes ver, sino que a veces provienen
Not
de
all the
uno mismo.
obstacles are external things.
Cuando hablamos de
Sometimes they come from
correr
ourselves.
en forma
When we
literal,
talk about running,
a veces
literally,
podemos decir para no hacerlo
we can think of
que nos quebramos el pie.
there's many reasons to not do
Pero
it,
es más
not
difícil
run.
reconocer
Break a
y
foot,
decir que nos da flojera
but it's
o no nos gusta sudar
difficult, more
o
difficult to
simplemente
recognize
jamás
that,
te
that
levantarías
sometimes we're just lazy. We don't like to sweat.
para salir a
We don't
correr
want to get up
sin
at 6
rumbo
o'clock
fijo.
in the morning to go running.
Frente a esos obstáculos es muy difícil
And
reponerse.
with these obstacles, it's very difficult to keep
En
going.
el caso de los filipenses,
In the case of the
hablamos de una
Philippians,
situación
we're
muy
talking about a situation that's much
va
worse.
a llorar porque se han
Paul will
convertido
cry
en sus propios obstáculos.
for these brothers and sisters who have
Él
become their own
expresa
obstacles.
dolor
He expresses
de
the
ver a
pain
personas amadas
to see
que probablemente
people that he
recibieron
loved,
el llamado de
people that
Jesucristo,
received the call
pero
of
que han
Christ,
decidido salir de la
but have
carrera.
now decided to leave the race.
Son personas,
There are people that are part of his family,
amigos
his friends,
de la comunidad
and
cercana,
the very close community,
y esto
and this is what
va a
causes
llevar a
Paul
Pablo
to cry.
hasta las lágrimas. ¿Puedes pensar en alguien así?
Does anyone come to mind?
Lamentablemente, creo que la mayoría de
Sadly,
nosotros
I think that
puede hoy
most of
llorar
us,
por algún
we can
amigo
cry
o
for a
miembro de
friend,
nuestra familia
a member of
que
our
está en
family
esta situación.
that are in this situation.
Sin embargo, hoy
However,
quiero animarte
today I want to
a
encourage
seguir
you
orando por
to
esta
continue
persona
praying for
que
these
ha
people,
abandonado la carrera.
for those who have moved out of the race
la
and
gracia de Dios para
to
su vida.
trust the grace of God in their lives.
Pablo dice que ellos se han transformado en
Another
enemigos
point,
de la cruz de Cristo.
obstacle, is those
¿Qué
who have
significa esto?
converted in the enemies of the cross of
Básicamente,
Christ.
asumir una actitud
What does this mean?
completamente
Is
opuesta
take on an
a la
attitude that is
actitud de
opposite
Cristo,
to the attitude of Christ,
quien siendo por
for who,
naturaleza
being in nature God,
no consideró el ser igual a Dios
not being equal with God, something to hold on to. And
y
he
fue
was
capaz de
able
hacerse
to become a
siervo,
servant,
humillarse
to become
para
humbled,
finalmente morir.
to finally die on the cross.
Algunas veces somos muy
Sometimes
rápidos para
we're
pensar
very
en otros.
fast to think about others,
¿Qué tal yo?
but what about myself?
¿Me he convertido en algún momento en enemiga
Have I,
de
in,
Cristo?
in a moment or another,
He sido
become an
capaz de
enemy of
dejar
Christ
todo
and his
atrás,
cross?
de
Have I
humillarme,
been able to
de
leave all the
volverme
weights behind,
siervo,
to be humble, to
o
be
aún
a
estoy
servant?
invocando antiguos
Or
títulos
am I still
a
looking
fin
at
de
old
serme acreedor de
degrees
reconocimiento?
and looking for recognition from things from the past?
Eugene Peterson, en Cómete este libro,
Eugene Peterson,
nos
in his
habla
book Eat This Book,
irónicamente de
and
la
speaks
nueva
ironically
Santa
about the
Trinidad,
new Holy
las
Trinity,
santas
the holy
necesidades, los
needs,
santos deseos
the holy
y los
desires,
santos sentimientos.
and the holy feelings.
Estos eran los dioses de aquel tiempo.
Those were the
No tan
gods of
evidente como una
this
estatua
time.
de 27 metros de alto,
Of this time, not so
pero
much as
bastante
a statue,
poderosos,
obvious statue of
y que
27 meters
lamentablemente
high,
siguen
but
siendo
very
dioses
powerful,
presentes en nuestra
and they're
actualidad.
very present in our context today.
¿Cuántos estudiantes al
How many
pasar a la vida
students,
profesional
when they become
se han
professionals, have
convertido
converted
a esta nueva Trinidad?
to this new Trinity?
¿Cómo nuestras
Our
economías,
economies, our
sistemas
social
sociales,
systems,
gobiernos nos animan
our
con
government
trompetas,
encourages
flautas y
us
címbalos
with
a
trumpets,
servir
flutes,
estos dioses?
cymbals to serve these gods?
¿Qué medida tomamos como
What
movimientos
measures do we
locales
take as
para
local
desechar
movements
estos dioses
to
y
put aside these
enfocarnos
gods
en el
and
verdadero
and
Rey de
focus
Reyes y
on
Señor
the
de Señores?
true God of gods and Lord of lords?
Si pensamos
See,
en la
if we
corrupción de
think
nuestros
about the
gobiernos,
corruption of our governments,
y que ocasionalmente traspasa incluso
that
nuestras
also
propias iglesias
affects
y
many
movimientos,
times our
debemos
churches
tener
and our
presente
movements,
que el inicio de este problema
we should take into account that the beginning of this
a quien
problem
rendimos nuestra adoración.
is where
Y
we
cómo entendemos
worship, where
cuál
we
es
put our
nuestra
hearts,
verdadera carrera y nuestra
and to
real
understand what is the real race
Estamos
and what is our
atentos
real
a
goal.
no estar enfocados
We should be
solo en lo
careful,
terrenal,
attent
y que no
to
sean
not
nuestras
be
necesidades,
focused
deseos y
on-
sentimientos
on
quienes nos gobiernan.
material
Al igual
things,
que Ananías,
not
Misael y
only on
Azarías,
our own
no nos
necessities
arrodillemos
or our
ante nuestros dioses.
desires or feelings,
El único
the
Dios
same
que
as
merece
Hananiah,
nuestra
Michael,
adoración
and
es Jehová.
Azariah, who
Y
did
esto
not
puede
worship
implicar en
these
nuestra
gods.
cultura incluso una oposición
This
rebelde y
might
abierta
mean
a
that in
los
our
sistemas
culture we need to
establecidos
have an
y
open
que
rebellion
seducen y
against the
oprimen a
established
nuestras
systems
sociedades
that
y una
oppress
vez
our
más,
societies and universities.
no nos
We
arrodillemos.
must not bow down.
Y recordemos que hay un premio en
And we
esta
should
carrera.
remember that there is a prize for the race.
En aquel
The
tiempo,
third point
el
is, let's
premio
talk about the
solía ser
prize.
una corona de olivos.
In the Roman
Como lo dije al
times,
inicio,
the
un
times of Paul,
reconocimiento
the
de la
prize
ciudad
was
y de
an
todo el
olive
entorno.
branch, the crown
algunos
of
casos,
made of olive.
Hay una copa,
Sometimes it's
como
a
la
cup,
Copa América 2015.
like the America Cup in football in 2015.
Si no saben quién ganó, pueden
Which
preguntar
Chile
a mí.
won, by the way.
Pero como cristianos, nos
But
hemos
as Christians,
acostumbrado a
we
pensar
have
en el
become
premio de
accustomed
esta carrera
to
como algo
think
exclusivamente
about the
que
prize of
vendrá
this race
en
of
el
something that is to
cielo,
come
en el más allá.
in heaven,
Pero hay
in the
otras
future.
implicaciones que tiene
But
este
there are
premio.
other implications related to this prize.
Ya somos
The first is that we are already citizens of heaven.
No tenemos que esperar
We don't need to
estar
wait
allá para
to be in
considerarnos
heaven
parte de nuestra,
to
esta
consider
nueva
ourselves
ciudadanía.
members
Members
of this new society. Daryl has spoken to us on Sunday about the evangelical citizen, And sometimes we consider ourselves as immigrants. And one time we arrive in heaven, we will receive our visa to just stay. We have every right to this citizenship because it's a citizenship received by grace. We are not able to receive it by any merit of our own. Only Jesus Christ can give it to us. The second part of the prize is transformation. The one who sponsors this race offers us transformation. Our minds, our hearts, as Paul says, our miserable bodies. Sometimes in our desire to spiritualize things, where sickness and pain is going to be transformed in a glorious body, and this will occur by the power of Jesus Christ, who himself experienced this amazing transformation with his resurrection. And this makes us realize that we will see this transformation of the whole of creation by the power of God that has been exalted. So after Paul has explained how we should run, he has explained the obstacles that we will face, and the prize that we will receive. He continues to encourage us, and he gives us a surprise. The very brothers and friends that are his joy, they are his crown. Paul considers that these people, the community of Philippi, as part of his prize. He loves them. He misses them. And they are part of the initial prize that he will receive while they maintain firm. I'd like you to look at the people that are around you. Look at them, please, those who are beside you, in front of you. They are part of the prize that God has already given you. This World Assembly is part of the prize of sharing in what God is doing in other people and also in ourselves. Loved brothers and sisters, Paul is saying is that this race we don't run alone. We run in community, in fellowship, a community that loves, that misses you when you're a long way away, that also cries, sheds tears. The community that is the prize, is a joy, it's a crown. And now what? The call to all of us is to be firm in the Lord, to keep going forward. It doesn't matter if we are tortoises that we cannot run, but if we can continue forward with those who are running and with those who are walking forward. None of these people in the photo are running, but they are going forward in the race. None of us who are here have finished the race. We need to maintain ourselves firm. We need to continue looking forward as part of this international community that's intergenerational, of students, evangelical students that go from Daniel and his friends to the point where until God takes them flock to himself. Let us remain firm in the Lord. Let us continue forward. Let us enjoy the taste of the prize that is this community. And particularly in this community, International Fellowship of Evangelical Students,
y en la universidad.
that are together in mission in the university. May God bless you.